Welcome to the Bella Vista Gardening Program. I am Jerry Horner, and today joining me is Butch Tetzlaff. He's the owner of the Bluebird Shed and Bella Vista, and the subject we're talking about today is our fine feathered friends. And we're going to learn how important birds are to our gardens, and we're going to learn a lot about birds today. And we will also be discussing things to do in your garden. There's not a whole lot to do in June, or July rather, instead of watering and weeding, but that's what we're going to talk about, what you need to do. And there aren't very many gardening activities going on in July. It's a little warm, but you can check with Crystal Bridges and the Botanical Garden of the Ozarks. Check their websites. They may have some activities going on, although they may be a little limited. But you know, check those websites out. But today, I want to welcome Butch to the show. He hasn't been here before, and I don't know why, because you know, birds are so important to our gardens, and we're just going to be talking about birds. But I'd like to have Butch give us a little background, like his prior life before moving to Bella Vista, and kind of give us the background.
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, my background is actually ornithology. I did master's work in ornithology at Illinois State University. I like to say 100 years ago, but honestly it was about 30 now, so it's been quite a while. But that's how I got started in birds. I got started back as I was an undergrad. I was fortunate enough to be involved with a couple of professors at Indiana University who turned out to be some of the premier ornithologists in the country.
Wow.
I was didn't appreciate it at the time. It was only in hindsight that I actually understand and realize that. But yeah, it was actually pretty good. So I was connected with some pretty good folks back in the day.
Sometimes your prior life is like, you know, seems like it's forever ago. But we're just so glad you're here and sharing all your knowledge about birds. So, but the one thing we want to talk about was the insect control that the birds take care of. You know, they take care of a lot of our bad insects, and we don't have too many bad insects, but they do collect insects for their babies and for their protein, right?
Yes, they certainly do. Yeah, purple martins are a big example of that. They're big mosquito eaters in the area.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if the swallows, especially tree swallows, barn swallows, do that as well. Your common, ordinary, everyday garden birds feed insects to their young, so they tend not to feed seed to their young. They need that extra additional protein and fats that come from the insects. Yeah. So they do an awful lot of insect feeding for sure.
Well, I think they're kind of falling down on the job, because I got so many gnats in the garden, I can't stand it. And the golf courses are full of gnats. Is there any of the birds that get the gnats out of the air?
Yeah, they're unfortunately a little small.
They're too small.
Yeah, exactly. Not really worth the effort for going after. So they like those big juicy caterpillars. So,
yeah, they do eat a lot of caterpillars. So, okay, and there's been a dramatic reduction in the bird species over the past 50 years, I'm sure. I know Doug Tallamy's talked about that, you know, that the bird populations have really shrunk. But
yes, definitely. Studies have shown from Cornell University and the bird banding lab that the populations are down about 40% since around 1970. So it's hard to imagine that we actually have half as many birds around on the planet as we did back just 50 years ago or so.
Yeah, because you don't notice that. You just think we have a lot of birds, and we don't realize.
We get used to what's around currently, so we just kind of assume that's the norm, and it's hard to really remember. But when you go back and look at the data, it's a substantial drop-off. Most of it is due to habitat degradation, decimation. Unfortunately, and that it continues to be a threat. You know, so we can't say anything negative about countries and areas that are trying to feed their own populations. But at the same time, if we can do things that are more bird friendly at the same time, then that would definitely help the environment.
So what are the things then we can do to attract more birds? Is just put out your feeders and plant.
Yeah, right. So from a personal household standpoint, one of the best things that the gardening folks can do is put out natural plants that are native to the area.
Right.
We have a tendency to plant a lot of ornamentals, not a bad thing necessarily, but ornamentals oftentimes are not very insect friendly because that's the reason they're planted. We plant ornamentals so that the insects don't eat the plants. But if we can actually add some plants that do attract those insects, the bird populations will come to our yards. And
Yeah, we're
and-
really
and do
trying to
good.
go, more native plants, even though sometimes they do attract bugs and may have a, bug bite on the leaf, and we have to learn to live with that. But,
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the key thing. And sometimes it's a little bit about changing our aesthetic and what we consider, attractive. So
Right.
when you've got blue and red and yellow and brown colored birds all coming to your yard, that adds quite a bit of beauty in and
Right.
of itself. So if
Yeah.
you can tolerate a bug bite here and there, so it's
So
on the
is
plant.
there certain seeds that certain birds eat, or I know I use the black oiled sunflower seeds.
Yeah, black oil is pretty much the go-to seed.
Yeah.
It is a very high fat content seed. It's as opposed to say striped sunflower. Striped sunflower is a harder shell for the birds to crack open. Black oil is a little bit thinner. It's easier for the birds to crack open. So
It's really funny
pretty
to
much
watch
the
them
go-to.
crack those things open and get that little seed out with that little
Yeah.
beak. They're really fun.
Yeah, they do. They do a
What?
good job. A lot of birds, like chickadees, titmice, nuthatches, they're kind of grab and go feeders, is what I like to call them. So they use a feeder as a drive-through, so to speak. So they just grab a seed, go back to a perch, and then hack it open, and then
Yeah.
eat the seed, then come back to the feeder, grab another one, and come back. And they do this multiple times in an hour.
It seems like they use up more energy coming back and forth than they get out of the seed
One would
sometimes.
think, yeah.
So-
But black oil sunflower is for sure the go-to seed, both in the shell and out of the shell. It's really good.
And those mixes that you see at some of the box stores, they have all kinds of seeds in them, but it doesn't seem like they like all those seeds.
Yeah,
that
well,
they
it's a good
use. Kind of a
observation,
waste.
actually. Yeah, it's a good observation. I like to say that anything that's round is probably not actually bird food. The big box stores have a tendency to, nothing against what they're selling, they have some good product out there too, but there's an awful lot of white millet, red millet, Milo, some other fillers, that are more carbohydrate based, things like wheat and rye, that sort of stuff, sometimes in bird seed. Birds really tend not to eat that stuff. So
Right.
if you can stick to the black oil, both in the shell, out of the shell, a little bit of safflower, tree nuts especially, peanuts, those types of things that are more premium type, you get a lot more birds.
So the suet also is high in protein for them then too.
Yeah,
right?
and that's especially fat. So it's certainly a good source of protein, but it's predominantly a good source of fat for the winter time. So the best time to put out suet is somewhere between November and March, when in the cooler weather.
So you really don't need it in the summer then.
You really don't. Yeah, not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like to recommend that birds will still come to it in the summertime, but it's not something that they rely on in the summertime. Yeah, so
Yeah. Well, we have to stick with that black oil sunflowers.
definitely good.
So, and then, the other thing I'm worried about is keeping them safe from predators. We have feral cats, and people let their cats out during the day, and some of them, they say they sit and watch the bird feeders waiting for an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of birds that are killed by
Yes,
cats.
there are. It's the cats can actually decimate a population. In island type habitats, where cats have become introduced into those islands, it decimated bird populations because they weren't used to having those predators around, so they really didn't know what to do, and it can literally decimate entire populations on island and in areas. And in small habitats like our own, the studies have shown that they can really do some serious damage.
Well, especially
to
there's
the bird
ground feeder
populations.
birds
Yeah.
too, right? That
Yeah,
they just
exactly.
eat off the ground, and they're really susceptible.
Yeah, they are. Cats are the consummate predator. They are really. Anybody that owns a cat, knows this from personal experience. We've got two of our own, and I like to say that in their world, humans must be ridiculously slow because our reaction times are. We just must move in slow motion to their eyes because they can just go out, reach out, and grab something
Really fast.
incredibly quickly. Yeah, exactly. So they tend not to be egg eaters, but they will be able to just pounce on a bird inadvertently.
Yeah.
So so the biggest predators around here are primarily raccoons, feral cats. Those are the two big ones that most people really have to worry about, and black snakes, rat snakes.
Yeah.
So those are the big three really. The way to combat some of that is if you can hang your feeders out away from your deck. A lot of people will have deck railings that they hang their feeders on. If you can hang those out on your deck, that will definitely help quite a bit.
Right.
You can baffle them either from the top or below, or if you have your feeders hanging from posts, poles. You can keep the squirrels and raccoons from climbing the baffles. Snakes are a little harder to deal with, unfortunately, because a lot of times those things can get rather large and they can go right around a baffle that we put on our feeders. So
Right.
there's a certain amount of predation that we have to pretty much accept, unfortunately, but we can reduce it pretty well by using some different methods.
Yeah, we've had an infestation of raccoons in our neighborhood and our street, and we've been trapping them and releasing them out in more country areas. So
Yeah.
I think we had 10 or 12 this past couple weeks.
Yeah, so it's not uncommon.
So we've had to take the feeders in at night. So that.
Yeah, that's a very common thing to do. At the store, we recommend that if folks have raccoon problems, the best thing to do is just bring your feeders in at night.
Right.
It basically just prevents the issue. A lot of times they'll decimate a feeder, they'll haul it into the woods, they'll break it, whatever.
Right, then you can't find it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a big cost in terms of both time and money.
And you've got some nice feeders there that are kind of squirrel proof, or try to be
Yes.
squirrel proof, where the squirrels won't get on them during the day. And
Yeah, definitely. There's a number of good products out there for squirrel proofing.
but they're pretty smart. They can they can figure out how to go around some of these preventative things too.
Yeah, they can be pretty good, but there are ways to combat the squirrels.
Yeah.
There's not a problem. There's some excellent products out there that I wouldn't say are 100%, but pretty darn close when it comes to squirrel prevention.
And then also on the backyard, you do the backyard bird count once a month now, and I think you've been
Yes.
doing that for like, I don't know, 6 months.
It's been a while now, yeah. So we started the backyard bird count a year ago, April. So it's actually we're on our 14th month of doing this. It was in response to trying to determine what is typically happening in October and November. We noticed anecdotally, we'd been keeping track in our own yard every week. We do a bird count in our own yard personally, and we've been doing this for a number of years. And we discovered that in around October, November timeframe, there was a lull. Oftentimes we just have 1 or 2 birds literally in a day, and it was pretty scant. So I posed the question to a listserv out there at the University of Arkansas, which goes all over the state of Arkansas. And there were a number of different possibilities that people were speculating was the reason there's this lull. Well, I got interested in trying to find out whether it's actually pervasive. Folks in Arkansas seem to say, yeah, it's happening in my feeders too. But what I really wanted to do was collect some hard data, publishable data, and perhaps to find out whether this lull is actually happening. It turns out it seems like it is. We've got, like I said, 1 year worth of data now. We're going to do this for a full 2 years for sure. But the backyard bird count, we can continue on. But what I do is concurrently with the backyard bird count, which are homeowners' involvement. So we have about 30 to 40 homeowners every month counting their birds in their backyard in a special way. We have a special form and a special protocol involved with doing this, so everybody's counting exactly the same way. And I have 30 points around Bella Vista that I stop at and do a 5-minute, what's called 5-minute point count. And I do that concurrently. So it takes me about 5 hours to do.
Wow.
Yeah, on a Saturday. I usually run a Saturday, Sunday, depending on the weather. But I've been doing that one as well to find out if we can correlate what I find in the field with listening, basically, with what people are finding at their feeders. And so that's another kind of study that's going on at the same time.
Right.
But the goal is to find out whether this lull actually exists and then to go through and try and do some experiments to actually explain it.
Well, it seems like I have a lull every time it's the weekend to count the birds, because I've been counting the birds for a while, and for some reason they're there on Friday and they're there on Monday, and on Saturday and Sunday they just disappear for
Yeah, that's a strange coincidence.
It
It really
and
is
I
kind of funny. You'd be
it
surprised.
wasn't just me. My brother and my sister-in-law were visiting for a couple weeks, and I said, "Oh, this is a bird count weekend," and so we saw birds on Friday, and then Saturday, Sunday, there's hardly any birds out there. I said, "Where did birds go?"
Yeah.
I think they just know I'm, spying on them or
Watching,
something. I don't know. It's strange. It's
Good question.
strange.
It's funny how many customers and people involved with the bird count actually say that happens. So it's purely coincidental, of course.
Yes, I'm sure it's a coincidence. It just seems kind of strange they disappear. So, but it is fun to do, and you do learn a lot about the birds. Because sometimes I wasn't sure what a bird was. Have to get the bird book out and see what it is, because there's so many different sparrows and different, species that you don't see you don't pay attention.
Yeah, right.
That's the thing, makes you pay more attention to what's out there. So.
Yeah, I like to say the more you look, the more you see.
It's
so
a
the
fun
more
activity.
You find.
And then also you're banding birds too, I understand.
Yes, we've got some great projects going on. Because my background is in ornithology, for me personally, merely bird watching, while it is fun and I enjoy it, the whole research scientific aspect is certainly my passion. So as a consequence, I got to know some folks down at the University of Arkansas. And one in particular, Dr. Jen Mortensen, she took a side step into some herpetology research for a while, but she was interested in getting back into birds. And because the Bluebird Society is up here and has almost 600 nest boxes now.
Right.
I told her, I says, this place is a prime for an opportunity for research. The infrastructure is already set up. You wouldn't have to spend any money at all doing that. It's pretty much just walk in, talk to the Bluebird Society, let them know what we're thinking about doing, propose a plan to them, and see if they'll allow us to use some of their boxes, for that research. So, so Jen and I have partnered up to do some pretty substantial research. It's pretty much going on 12 months out of the year now, but different projects that are all pretty much related together.
Well, the Bluebird Society, ever since we've lived here, I mean, I've always said that Bella Vista is the bluebird capital of the world. We've got so many bluebirds per capita that no other city has. So
it is. It's a pretty unique environment in that respect. The Bluebird Society has been going on for 40 years, and in fact, they're celebrating their 40th anniversary this year.
Right.
This summer. They've fledged almost 50,000 baby bluebirds in that time frame, and it is pretty amazing. The box count has continued to grow over time. And the organization is doing a very good job in terms of.
Well, I was so impressed because we moved here to play golf, and on the golf courses at the 150-yard markers, there's bluebird houses on each side of the fairway. So there's been a lot of bluebird houses on the golf courses for many years. So.
Yeah, right, exactly. And in fact, that's how it started out. They put them out as yardage markers, and then they pretty much expanded out. So now they're all over the place. We've got them at Loch Lomond Park. They're at the cemetery, a couple of churches around town, some private properties around, places like Concordia. They're scattered around quite a bit. So yeah, we are doing some banding out there. The banding is part of the research. It allows us to uniquely identify an individual bird in case we sight it again. I've got some examples here.
Okay.
I do have a bird banding permit, just to let you know, the public know. It does require a federal and state permit in order to do this. I'm the only one with a federal permit in this area, in the four county area, northwest Arkansas, that is allowed to band birds. Don't know how close you can zoom in on things, but this is what we call a size 1B band. It is specifically for bluebirds. There are other species that will use this 1B as well, like tufted titmice, for example. It's a split collared band, so it looks pretty much like this. Okay, so you open it up with a pair of pliers. I've got those here, and if you can see the little projection that's on the side of these pliers here, it allows you to open up that split. And then once it's open like this, you put it on the tarsus of the bird's leg around. It basically functions like a bracelet. And then there's these openings here that basically clasp it back together. So you can see that there. But then it functions as a bracelet. It'll move up and down on the bird's leg. It doesn't harm them at all. Millions and millions of birds have been banded in this way.
And they're kind of silver? Is that what
Yes, these are Silver Fish and Wildlife Service bands.
So I've never seen a bird with a band on it, but I guess I've never looked. So I'm going to have to pay more attention.
Yeah, it's really not common that you would actually see one just randomly because there's just not that many relative to the bird population in general. But we have been color marking nestlings this year as part of the research. We've got over 260 color banded nestlings out there now that are just in and around Bella Vista. Hopefully we'll respot those. We've done personal private homeowners' yards, and the birds are coming back to their feeders regularly, and they're getting their binoculars and photos. It's pretty fascinating to be able to recite these guys, and they're really helping us out quite a bit.
That's amazing.
One of the things we're studying is how long they stay with their parents and before they disperse off their natal territories.
But would they go, several miles away, or would they just kind of stay locally where they were hatched?
Yeah, exactly. So that's one of the things we're trying to find out is that this is color bands. What I'm holding here is it's an orange color band, and we've got blue ossel here as well. We were using 7 different colors on our birds, and that gives us 1,176 different possible combinations so that we can band 1,176 unique birds so that we can recite them through binoculars again. But yeah, the homeowners are starting to see them, and we'll see them out in the field as well. You just know which colors you see on which legs and over and under, that kind of thing, you know, because it's sequence dependent. But yeah, it's really pretty fascinating, wonderful to see that the birds are sticking around.
So if any of our viewers would see a bird with a band on it, they should try to take a picture.
Definitely, yeah.
And let you know what they saw, send you the picture.
Yeah, definitely, because let us know the date that you saw it and where. That would be very good, because then we know where it was banded at physically, so then we know how far it dispersed to that location that you saw it at that time period, and how long it took to get there. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah, one of the things we're trying to learn is, like I said, how long they stick around. We suspect that the second brood of the season, the later birds, will stay through the winter time, not disperse out until the spring. We suspect the first batch of birds actually disperse out after a couple of months, but it's just supposition at this point right now.
So if we have a bluebird house and we have a batch of eggs that just hatched, should we call you to see about banding them? Or?
If you're interested in having them banded, yes, definitely. We ask that people keep an eye out, you know, just not cursory, but take some serious time and effort. We have a worksheet that people fill out and write their sightings down. It takes a little bit of effort to do, you know, so we just don't want to do this willy-nilly, because it costs time and money and that sort of thing to band the birds if we're not going to get some resighting potential afterwards. But yeah, if you're interested in doing it.
Well, we seem to have a lot more time on our hands lately, since we're all, you know, kind of shuttered down and can't do too much. So this would kind of fill in some time. You'd have more time to do this, but it's just so interesting to see the banding and how intricate it is.
Yeah, it is wonderful. It's fascinating. We have been resighting a number of birds. It's been going quite well, actually. So it's just one of the projects that we're working on at the moment. Another one we're working on is what's called winter roosting behavior, and that is whether the birds use the boxes that are out on the Bluebird Society areas during the winter time in order to basically take shelter from the weather, you know, inclement weather. So the Bluebird Society, for the most part, up until this point, has really concentrated on producing fledglings. Okay, so getting reproductive units, if you want to call it that, out in the population. So they primarily have concentrated on counting fledglings, you know, that they've produced, which is good. Obviously, it's a fantastic metric, but the long-term objective is just not to produce fledglings. The long-term objective is get reproducing adults into the population in the next generation. So they have to survive that first winter as well.
Well, in the wintertime, would they just go into the house and not make a nest?
Yeah, exactly.
So they would just shelter in the house?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's exactly what they do. So we've only found that about 15% of our boxes were used last year, roughly, for winter roosting. But the Jonesboro population, the university, or Arkansas State University study, has been doing this for a little bit of time, and they're getting 46% of their birds, or their boxes, being used in the wintertime.
Really?
So the question now is, why aren't our boxes, you know, was it a light winter last year in terms of weather, perhaps?
Well, some of our winters are like not winters.
Yeah, so there's always a possible.
But I don't think I've ever seen a bluebird go into our bluebird house, you know, in the winter.
In the wintertime, well, they do it pretty surreptitiously. It can be, they'll usually do it after sunset and dark. Okay, so they may not go in until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and most people aren't watching their birds then. And then they'll come out before sunrise. So they have a tendency to pop out somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock in the morning.
They sneak in and sneak out, right?
Yeah, definitely. So the Jonesboro group actually was going out at 2 and 3 in the morning. Okay, and seeing who was in the boxes at crazy hours of the morning, and that's when they discovered theirs. We were actually just looking for evidence that they'd been in the box. Okay, and there are ways to do that. We were also putting temperature probes in the boxes themselves, so that we could look for an increase in temperature over the ambient. You know, and look for the difference there to find out whether the boxes were being used. So,
well, I'm gonna have to look at that too.
So. But the third project that we're actually involved with is a migration research project. We're looking at migration in the sense that bluebirds are what we call partial migrants. So there are full migrants, say for example house wrens. House wrens come into our area, they leave entirely. You know, they head down south. Orioles are the same way. They pass through, go to the north, you know, Iowa up towards Minnesota, and then head back down to Mexico in the summertime.
Right.
Partial migration occurs when part of the population migrates and other individuals do not. Okay, so it's kind of a halfway in between stage. And what we're trying to do is determine which individuals are migrating, what proportion of the population is migrating, and what are actually the causes of those migrations on an individual basis. So we're trying to figure out which birds are migrating and why, and what the differences are there. So.
Well, we've got a lot to learn about birds, so we got a good start here with you helping. So
yeah, it's been good. Appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate that. And the other thing we need to talk about is what to do in your garden in July. We've ran out of rain apparently, and now we're in a drought situation, so you have to, you know, water smartly and use your drip irrigation, excuse me, and just water in the morning or the evening and keep the plants hydrated. You got to deadhead your annuals, keep them deadheaded, they don't get leggy. Perennials, pinch back your mums till about mid-July, and lawns require about 1 inch of water a week. And all of the things that you need to do in your garden for the month of July are on our website, so you can always refer to the BellaVistaGardenClub.com on the website, and it'll kind of give you hints what to do in your garden for the month. So, and if you have more questions about gardening, there is the BentonCountyGardening.org website. They've got a lot of information, and the Bella Vista Garden Club website, BellaVistaGardenClub.com. And we've taken a break with our meetings because of the COVID-19, so we're hoping to start meeting again in September, and we'll keep you posted on that. So the main thing to do in July is stay cool and enjoy the little bit longer days because they get shorter every day now, and our sun's setting a little earlier. And I thank you, Butch, for coming today and sharing all this knowledge about birds. We're just, it's just a fascinating subject, and we're going to have to be more aware of what the birds are doing in our gardens. So, and they're fun to watch. So, and I hope you'll come back and share more information after you get more statistics. So,
Oh yeah.
Because it's an ongoing project.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks for having me, Jerry. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And I hope you enjoyed the show and that you will tune in next month. And until then, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.